We're going to explore busyness in this audio and video. Busyness seems to be one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest diseases in our time. I'm constantly working with people who are overwhelmed. So, what is busyness? What is busyness? It strikes me that there's two elements to busyness. One is the amount that I have on, the amount that you have on, the amount of things that you're doing. And then the other part of busyness is the thinking that you have about all that you're doing. So there's overload and there's overwhelm. Overload is I've got lots on, perhaps too much on. And overwhelm is I'm overwhelmed by what I've got on. And it's possible to have both going on. It's very common to have both going on. It's also possible to not have too much on and still be overwhelmed because of our relationship to the mind and the noise of what's going on, that we're still worrying about it or whatever else. So I'm going to explore both overload and overwhelm. Overload. I've got too much on, you've got too much on. So one of the things you might want to explore is, why are you doing all that you're doing? Because underneath everything that you're doing is a layer of thinking. Underneath everything that you're doing is a layer of thinking. So what you might identify, you might want to look at the different things that you're doing and saying, why am I doing what I'm doing? And there's always an opportunity to, some people take, like, work extra hard is a very common one, like work extra hard. And when we look at what they're doing, it might be, for example, that they are worried about not being good enough. They're thinking that they need to prove themselves to the boss, or they get into a new job and it's like, well, okay, I need to prove myself. And the I need to prove myself thinking means that they work extra hard, taking on more tasks, doing it more thoroughly, etc., which is creating part of the overload. There's other stories that people might have, like, I need to provide for my family. Or I need to make sure my mother's okay, and that means I visit her 4 times a week. And I'm not saying any of this is good or bad or right or wrong, but I'm just inviting you to look at the layer of thinking that's underneath what you're doing and the amount that you've got on. Because often there's some, what I might call some dicky thinking going on, some dicky unconscious thinking that you haven't realized is operating, driving your show, that isn't supporting you in living a fulfilling life. So let's move on to overwhelm. Overwhelm. What we want to do with this is to observe what the mind does. And the mind, it's very easy for us to get caught up in stories. Maybe first of all, I should tackle the more obvious practical one, which is, are you doing things in your life that support you and keep you calm? So do you have a morning practice? Do you get up and do some meditation or some yoga or go for a run, or when you come back from a busy day at work, is there a process or something you're able to do to go for a walk on the beach, walk with a dog, or it's like, what's your process to calming the mind? Because in this time of overload, often we're not setting up our lives in a way that supports us having more space, more clarity, a time for the mind and the body to relax. We weren't designed to be working 20 hours a day, thinking, operating in this high intensity way. And then the second part of overwhelm is, what's our relationship to our thoughts? Because our thoughts create the narrative that we live within. And this is a longer, deeper exploration and a big, big topic here, but it's like, are we caught up in our thinking? Are you over worrying? Are you over analyzing? Are you living in some stories about what people think of you? You're worried about what your boss thinks or your partner thinks, or you're worried about letting someone down. And so a significant part of overwhelm, and hence busyness, is that we're caught up in the noise of the mind. So it's possible to have loads on and still be calm. It reminds me of one of the Star Wars movies, Rogue One. And I remember this scene where there's a massive battle going on. And there's a Chinese man who is blind, who is fighting in the middle of the battle. He can't even see, but he is calm and fighting off all of these forces that are trying to attack him. And he is calm and he is aware. And even though there's loads going on, he's not overwhelmed. He's calm, he's grounded, he's centered, and he is doing what he needs to do in the moment. And actually, because he's so calm and centered, he's more present, he's more able to pick up what's going on, he's more able to react, and so on. So 3 things I'm inviting you to do from this. One is look at overload and look at the thinking you've got underneath what you've got on, to see if there's things you might be able to change. 2 is to put practices into your life that enable you space and time for the mind to relax, recuperate, and restore and reflect. And 3 is really start to observe what you're caught up in and to let go of any thinking that isn't, you can see that is kind of made up and not helpful to you.